Greetings, dear ones. It is Sunday again. I believe that it is indeed, yes, the 8th of November. Can you believe it? You blink and another week goes by. I'm running a little late getting the video done today because I'm still having to wrangle around with this bad foot, and I had a lot of things to do today. I write a really long blog post on Sunday, and then I do this video, and I did content for my patrons on Patreon. And so I'm getting a little late, but I also decided this week to do what I did a couple weeks or so ago because the topic was so important to me. So this topic is spread out in two parts. Part one is the blog post that I wrote today and already uploaded to my blog and all over social media and to my patrons in Patreon. Again, all links below this post to find me anywhere. Uh, and what I wanted to write about and why it came about that I wrote about this, because it was not what I was going to talk to you about this week, is the kindness of strangers. The blog post, which again you'll have the link below, is part one. This video is part two, because there's so much to say about it, to think, to share, and I really wanted to do it with you. In the blog post, I talked about many examples about how I have gratefully been the recipient of many kindnesses from strangers and neighbors that I didn't know after Hurricane Florence 2 years ago, with my recent injury, taking a bad fall 3 weeks ago, and badly spraining my foot and ankle, tearing ligaments with an up to a 3 to 6 month recovery time ahead of me, and unable to barely get up out of this recliner to use the bathroom, and needing a lot of help. And between my daughter and her best friend, who is a teacher and comes and helps me twice a month with some of the heavier chores it's hard for me to do now, and my neighbors directly across the street, I've had a lot of help, and others have helped, and I wrote all about that in the blog post. And then this morning, and this little bit of a story I wrote the first part of in the blog post. When I wrote the blog post, the second part hadn't even happened. But what I wrote in the blog post was that I was in the kitchen this morning about 11 o'clock. I was up a little late because I'd been up last night late, unable to go to sleep. So I was at about 11 o'clock, I was in the kitchen making coffee, and someone knocked at the door. Well, I don't have many people knock at the door, especially on a Sunday. So I went, and I cautiously and a little nervously looked out the peephole, and I saw this elderly woman that I didn't know who she was. But I opened the door, and she was just the biggest, sweetest smile on her face. And she said, "Hello, my name's Loie, and my husband and I live with my son and his family a few houses down. And they have 4 boys, and we wanted to offer you a blessing." And I thought, what in the world is she going to say? And she said, "We have noticed that the pine straw is getting really heavy in your yard. I have a very big front yard and a very big backyard. And I have gigantic old pine trees all around the house. The front yard literally was a carpet of thick pine straw, which happens this time of year. Like the leaves fall from the trees, the pine needles fall from the pines." And I said, "Oh, you're so kind, but I really can't afford to pay anybody right now." And she said, We don't want any money. We just want to help. And it was staggering because it's been a worry to me. This is the time of year when the pine straw needs to be dealt with. I didn't currently have anybody to help me. My 16-year-old grandson has been cutting my grass a couple of times a month over the summer, and he didn't even have to do it in October. We've had no rain, but he will do it once more in November to close out the year. But that pine straw, it's a big job. And I wouldn't have asked him, pardon me, I had to help Molly. I wouldn't have asked him to do it. I mean, that's an hours long job. It has to be all raked up. It's just a big job. But she said the boys would come down today if I would like. And she said, what would you like us to do with the pine straw? And I said, well, I usually use it because I have a very large garden in the front. It's a cottage, old-fashioned cottage garden. It goes all along the front of the house and around the side. It's big. It covers a lot of area. And I said, I use the pine straw for mulch. This time of the year when the pine straw comes down, you heavily mulch the garden. And it's a wonderful organic source. And I don't have, living on Social Security, I don't have in my budget a lot of money to buy, the mulch, like at Lowe's or something. So I use the natural mulch. Well, she said, no problem. We'll get it all raked up. Or she said the boys would get it all raked up and spread around things in the garden. So I thanked her profusely. I said I wished I could hug her, but because of COVID, and we both laughed, and she said, I know I'm a big hugger too. Darn this COVID. And so she went on, and then hours went by, and nobody ever came. So I thought, oh, well, it was a nice offer. Maybe they'll come another day. Maybe they won't. Well, my daughter Rachel was coming this afternoon around 4:30 to spend a couple hours with me, see what I needed help with here and so on. And she came in and she said, Mom, your front yard is full of people. And I and I had thought like these four young boys were going to like break it up a little bit. Well, they had not only, cleaned off the driveway, the sidewalk, raked up the pine straw. The boys were here. Loie, who was their grandmother, and her husband were here. The boy's father was here. I literally had a front yard full of people. And there was so much pine straw. And Loie had so carefully gone around she put a really thick bed of pine straw down in the garden, and all carefully all around all the plants and flowers and things. And they still had a ton of pine straw, bagged up in probably 10 bags up at the curb to be picked up. And I said, oh, Loie, I said, this is so lovely. And I said, but I don't put pine straw out to be picked up because I can't afford mulch. And the gate, the privacy fence, like gates that are on the side of my house, sorry, my tripod sitting on my lap on the laptop is jiggling a little. I apologize. And I said, there's a double gate and it's locked. You can't get into my backyard because the gates on either side have padlocks. But I said, just over the gate is a big compost pile. And I said, if it's not too much trouble, you can just open those bags and just dump them over the fence. And my helper, my Eleanor, has been helping me get the garden cleaned up and weeded for fall since I can't get out. And that's what she's been doing. Is she went through weeding and cleaning up the garden. She just threw the things of it over the fence. So the father said, sure, no problem. And they did. I just thanked them profusely. I nearly cried. I couldn't believe somebody just out of the blue would show up And it was a lot of work. And I said, I don't even know how to thank you. And they were so kind and so sweet and so gracious. And they said, please call us anytime you need any help. Now, these were people I didn't even know before today. I've lived here 10.5 years. I moved in the 1st of February 2010. These people didn't live there then. Where they lived, there wasn't even a house. I live on a dead-end street, and they bought property at the dead end and built a house not long ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So I didn't know them. And so these people, without having been asked, out of the goodness of their heart, saw something needed to be done at a house inhabited by an old lady who is disabled, and they just came and did it. I often say, kind of jokingly, how in the Disney movie there are those three chubby, darling little Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo sisters. I often say I need the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo ladies to get such and such done. Well, these people, they were the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo people. It was like magic. It was a mess. It was inches high in pine straw. The whole yard is clean. The driveway, the sidewalk, clean. The garden, beautifully mulched. And all the rest of that tons of pine straw over the fence in the compost pile. What a blessing indeed. And it made me think about the fact that we live in times that have been troubling and painful, heartbreaking racial issues, heartbreaking gender issues with people who are gay, transgendered, all down the line. The political battle of this last year during the election, contentious and painful to watch at times. A country divided politically, always struggles with differences in religious beliefs. So many things that are so hard, that are either heartbreaking or you want to tear your hair out. It's been hard times. And yet, so many kindnesses. With the terrible COVID virus wreaking heartbreak and havoc, with people getting sick and dying, with people being out of work, with whole communities being shut down. Terribly hard for everybody. And there are the people on the front lines, the doctors, the nurses, the first responders, all of these people putting their lives at risk for strangers and showing up every day for strangers. The thing that I think is so incredibly powerful about all of the people in those kinds of positions, and this has gone on with these kind of people before COVID, and it will continue to go on after COVID, is that it's one thing, and if you are blessed, as I am, to have a daughter, to have neighbors that would help, that's tremendous. That's tremendous. There aren't words to thank all of these beloved people enough. But when strangers who have no vested interest in you or your life, that don't know you from Adam, show up to help you, to me, it is a profound teaching in what we most need in the world today. And that is being one of those strangers that bestow kindness to others. Yes, we want to help our family and our friends and our neighbors if we can. But we need to reach out and do what we can. You know, it's hard for me because there are so many things I want to do, so many things in ways that I would like to help. But a disabled senior citizen who can't get around physically very well in the best of times, like before this ridiculous fall, and I'm agoraphobic and struggle with ongoing mental health issues that are carefully monitored and carefully taken care of, therapy, medication, self-care routines that are very important. I do the very best I can with all of that. But what that means is there are so many ways that I'd like to help that I'm not able to, which is why I have an online community, which is why I've done the blog for 14 years that now has over 2,020,000 visits. I have spent time writing and answering and helping people because I wanted to be of service. And that's something I don't have to leave my house to do. And I am a writer first and foremost, and that was a way that I could help. Now, with my Patreon community, I am being financially supported by patrons who want to help support my work with Maisie's World, which is not just this character that I draw and paint and whose story I want to tell, but Maisie's World is so much more than just the art. Maisie's World is a philosophy, a message that I want to spread, grounded in loving kindness and compassion and empathy, and in showing the world that if somebody like me, who's 66 years old, physically disabled, mental health challenged, and yet happier than she's ever been in her life, because I'm doing the work. I wrote down a phrase the other day in my notebook. I have a kind of a notebook, sketchbook that lives next to me on this chair, and I am constantly all day making notes for my work, for my writing, for Patreon. And I wrote, it just popped into my head, and I wrote, and then came Maisie. And Maisie was a turning point in my life when she appeared. If about the 1st of February, it'll be 2 years since I've been drawing and painting Maisie and telling her story. On my blog, throughout social media. Then with over 30 paintings, I opened a Society 6 shop, also to spread the message and get Maisie's work out, the art out, because people loved it. It's not fancy schmancy. It's not, I'm a self-taught artist, kind of wonky and wabi-sabi, this art of mine, but kind of endearing. And people have fallen in love with Maisie. So I opened the Society 6 shop, and where people could buy mugs and tote bags, masks, t-shirts, all kinds of art to put on the wall, whether it's a print or just all kinds of stuff. Leggings, I mean, tote bags, just millions of things, stickers, journals. I especially love the journals. But anyway, I did Society 6, and then I started Patreon. Last week, November 1st, started my 3rd month on Patreon, and I added 2 new tiers, which I talked about last week. Again, links below if you're interested. And Patreon has become a surprise to me, because I knew it would be about the painting and the art and Maisie's message that even if you are limited in some way, you can still achieve dreams, maybe slightly reshaped, maybe envisioned in a slightly different way. But if I could turn this camera around, which would just be awkward, you would see that I literally live in a rainbow house. As I said, because I put up a couple pictures on Facebook and Instagram this last week, laid up, watching the election returns, having kind of a hard time. And so I just sat here reading part of the day and knitting. And you can see from where I sit here in my recliner, this is what I call the cozy room. It's where the TV is, where the fireplace is, and it opens into my rather large studio. Every room, you can see this room is bright yellow. You can see that on the wall behind me. All the bookshelves are pink. The stucco around the fireplace is a soft peach. You look into the studio, which is kind of a vivid sea green, and into the kitchen, which is kind of an aqua turquoise kind of color with coral cabinets, and on and on. I always laugh when I remember the person who said my house looked like an Easter egg basket, and indeed it does. You don't have to have much money to paint a room, put some twinkly lights up, and change your whole world. But I wanted to get out the message about Maisie's world. Since then, as I talked to you a couple of weeks ago, when I opened the third tier on Patreon, it is the what I call the ebook e-course level, where I am further exploring and teaching the art of accepting what is. That was a two-parter a couple weeks ago. First part on the blog, second part in the Sunday afternoon video. But the thing is, that is at the heart of Maisie's world. The philosophy, the message, the art of accepting what is. The Maisie accepting that, yes, she's agoraphobic and she does not leave her house at all. So she is limited in a pretty severe way. But within that world of hers, within those four walls, she has created a bright, colorful, joyful, creative, imaginative, fantastical life with all kinds of creatures, real and imagined, and just a wonderful story. And the whole point of Maisie's world is that once you accept what is the reality of your life today, then you can start to build new possibilities. You have accepted what is, and you see within what that is all the ways that you can expand and grow and create and see your dreams realized. So anyway, Maisie's world is all of that, but what was really important to me when I started Patreon was not just getting support for my work, but creating a community where I could help other women achieve their dreams, transcend their fears, and the thought of limitations keeping them from doing what they held in their heart. There are many, many ways to help and to be of service in the world. And now, we have a new president and president-elect, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And yes, I voted for them. I prayed for them. This whole week I've been on pins and needles like everybody else in the country waiting for the results. And I watched the victory speeches last night, first of Senator Harris and then of Joe Biden, and I cried listening to both of them. To bring back kindness, decency, gentleness. I believe we're on track to do a lot of healing in this country. Community to community, person to person, not just in the United States, but around the world. And the kindness of strangers is what we need more than anything else now. Is there some way you can help or be of service, even if you, like me, are disabled in some way that means that you don't leave your house? I didn't leave my house before COVID. Now a lot of people can't leave their house because of COVID. But there are endless possibilities with the incredible world available to us by the flip of a switch on our computer. There are a great many things you can get involved in, volunteer your time for, ways that you can help other people. If you are able to get out into the community or to your next door neighbor, especially the elderly who can't get out, to take them a meal, to rake up their pine straw, in any way that you can offer a kindness to someone who needs it. It is a two-way blessing. You are blessed in the giving, and the recipient of your kindness is blessed in the receiving. I talk a lot about this in the blog post, because though I'm not able to get out and about now, I used to be able to do a lot of things, like physically in person out in the world, to help other people, and that meant a lot to me. Now that I'm more limited in that way, I'm finding other ways online to help people. Unless you are disabled and unable to leave your house physically, and knowing that in these COVID times there are protocols in place to keep us safe, social distancing, mask wearing, vitally important. Please know that it is vitally important that you're not just wearing a mask for yourself. You're wearing a mask for other people around you. You're wearing a mask for your parents, your children, your grandparents, your friends, your neighbors, people you don't know in the grocery store that without a mask you may infect them and they could die. Isn't that horrible? That is the reality, and that is the responsibility of all of us. That is a kind of kindness from strangers. In this time, our nation has a great deal of healing to do. And our relationships as a country that has been in turmoil the last 4 years, and much damage has been done in our relationships with governments and allies around the world. It is time for us to do the healing that must begin here in each of our hearts, in each of our homes, in our families, in our neighborhoods, toward everyone we meet, online, offline, however you can do it. Healing starts here, and it spreads across the nation and around the world. It is my heartfelt prayer that this may be so. I'm doing my part in as much as I'm able, even with a purple foot up in the air and laid up for 3 to 6 months. I work every day in this chair. I haven't missed a day of doing the morning coffee video that I do for my patrons 5 mornings a week. A 20 or so minute video just to touch base, face to face, with my voice, with a full heart to share what I can to start the day. I come here on Sundays. I blog every week, a thoughtful blog post that I hope will reach and touch and help others, as it has helped more than 2 million people these last years. I hope that you will visit the blog. Check me out on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. I'm also on Pinterest, which I love. Again, all links will be at the bottom. I'd love it if my Patreon is a woman-only community. If you would like to join us there, I would be delighted. I added 2 tiers, so there's 3 tiers with different kinds of rewards and content for patrons. And you can check that out at patreon.com/Maisie's World, link below. And a couple of people, and I appreciate it so much, did send me a donation to help me with some of the things that I need to get through this trying time with being laid up. And I want to thank you. You know who you are. Thank you so much. And people have asked how they could support me if they weren't going to be a patron. And at the bottom of this list of links below this post is a tip jar. It's simply a link to to PayPal. And a donation in any amount helps keep me going, my life and my work going here, and to spread Maisie's world with the world, and to help strangers and others. You are not a stranger to me if you are watching this. We are growing a community. We are an extended family. I love and care about each and every one of you. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to watch this video, to share it with anyone you think might enjoy it. Again, this is a 2-parter, and the first part is on the blog. Again, link below. I hate to keep saying that, but I want to make sure you know that all of the information you're looking for is below this video that you're watching. You read a little description under the video at YouTube, and then it'll say read more, and you click that, and all the rest of it is there. And finally, if you could help me build my fledgling channel here on YouTube, if you would click the thumbs up, like button, and you can click the button to subscribe so you get notices about all my videos. This channel will mainly only have public videos on Sundays, but I am now once a week on Tuesdays sharing publicly one of my morning coffee with Maitri videos. And it might help, it might be something fun, and it also allows you to see and understand some of what I'm doing on Patreon if you might be interested. Blessings and love, dear hearts. Take special care of your tender heart, and have a beautiful week ahead. I will see you next Sunday.